The air in King's Landing always smelled of secrets. Ned Stark had never liked it. The heat clung to him, and the city whispered too much. But today, the whisper he'd heard was enough to change the game. Varys had come to him, slinking out, from the shadows like smoke, and whispered something that made his blood run cold. "Littlefinger is playing you, Lord Stark. He means to hand you over to the Lannisters." Ned didn't want to believe it. He'd trusted Peter Baelish more than he should have, enough to let him control the City Watch. That had been his greatest mistake. But this time, he wouldn't make another. That evening, Ned summoned Littlefinger to his chambers. The man entered with his usual smug smile, lips always on the edge of a lie. "You called for me, my lord?" Peter asked, voice dripping with false humility. "I did," Ned said calmly, though his hand rested on the hilt of his sword. "I need to know. When the time comes to arrest Cersei and her children, will the City Watch stand with me?" Littlefinger smiled again. "Of course. They'll follow your lead. I've made arrangements." Ned stared at him, seeing it now. All the half-truths, the slight turns of phrase, the knowing glances. It all made sense. And what if they don't? What if they turn their blades on me instead? Peter's smile froze. His eyes narrowed, slightly, calculating. "I think you've been listening to the wrong people," he said, stepping forward. That's when Ned drew his sword. Not ice, not here in the capital, but his shorter blade, worn at his hip. "You betrayed me, Peter. You sold me out to the Lannisters before I even drew breath in this city. I should have listened to my gut." Littlefinger took a step back, laughing nervously. "Come now, Ned. Don't do anything rash. This is politics. You can't—" Ned stepped forward and without hesitation drove the sword through his chest. Peter Baelish choked on his own breath. Blood bubbled on his lips. "You don't know what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done," Ned said coldly. "I just saved the realm." The door burst open behind him. Jory Cassell and two of his guards rushed in. They stared at the fallen body, then at Ned. "Lord Stark?" Jory asked, unsure. "Take the body. Dispose of it quietly. We move at dawn." Word didn't spread. Not yet. But Ned moved fast. He summoned Commander Janos Slynt of the City Watch and laid out his cards. "I know you were promised gold by Littlefinger to betray me. He's dead, but I can offer you something else, your life, and a future under a just king." Janos hesitated. "But gold meant nothing when your throat was a sword's reach away." He agreed. That morning, instead of being the victim, Ned became the blade. He marched into the Red Keep with 1,000 blades at his back and with a letter from the dying. Robert naming him protector of the realm, he declared the truth. Cersei stood in front of the Iron Throne, flanked by her children. Her green eyes were flames. "You think anyone will follow you, Stark?" she hissed. "I don't need them to follow me. I only need them to see the truth," Ned said, and held out the royal will. Tension filled the throne room like smoke. Then, surprisingly, one of the King's Guard, Sir Barristan Selmy, stepped forward and took the document. His eyes scanned it, and his face darkened. "This is Robert's seal," he said aloud. "It is valid." Cersei's face went pale. Joffrey shouted from the throne, "I am king. I command you to kill him." But the City Watch turned on the boy, and the King's Guard hesitated. Joffrey's voice cracked. He was just a child throwing a tantrum. "Seize the Queen and her children," Ned ordered. "Do them no harm, but they are no longer fit to rule." For the first time since he'd come south, Ned Stark stood victorious. But he knew the storm was only beginning. The dungeon beneath the Red Keep was colder than the northern snows, but Cersei Lannister didn't shiver. She sat on the stone bench like a lioness, waiting for the chance to strike. Her eyes, red from hours of rage, stared through the iron bars as Ned Stark approached. He didn't gloat, he didn't threaten. That wasn't his way. He simply looked at her the same way he once looked at a dying direwolf, sad, firm, and beyond saving. "You'll regret this, Stark," she whispered, voice thick with fury. You think this is justice? You've only signed death warrants. For your daughters, for your house, for the realm." Ned remained quiet for a moment. Then finally he said, "You could have run. I gave you that chance." "And abandon my son's crown?" She laughed bitterly. "You still don't understand us, do you? You northern fools still believe honor wins wars." "I don't believe that anymore," he replied quietly, then turned and walked away. Upstairs, the throne room had become something else entirely. Less, a seat of power, and more, a battlefield of whispers. Lords and knights from every house in the capital buzzed with news. The queen had been imprisoned, the children of incest exposed, the Baratheon name restored to Stannis, and the city watch, held by Ned Stark, but none of it was stable. Varys, ever the spider, found Ned before sunset. "You've cut the head off one snake, my lord, but you must know, the others are slithering already." "Let them come," Ned said. "They'll find steel waiting." "Oh, I don't doubt. Your steel, Lord Stark," Varys said with a faint smile. "But war is not always fought with blades. Some men kill with coin, some with lies, some with fear." That night, ravens flew to Dragonstone. Ned had written to Stannis Baratheon himself, urging him to come to the capital and claim the throne that was rightfully his. He had also written to all the major houses, urging peace and unity under the true king. It was the last hope of avoiding war. Sansa, once blind with love for Joffrey, now sat quietly in her chamber. The reality of her former fiancé's cruelty weighed heavy on her. She didn't cry anymore, not since the moment she watched the Goldcloaks drag Joffrey away, screaming threats and curses. He was just a boy, but a twisted one, and she had been promised to him like a lamb to slaughter. Arya, on the other hand, had taken to sword practice again with renewed fire. Ser Barristan had even offered to train her in secret, calling it a favor to a man I still respect. She reminded him of someone, Lyanna perhaps, but the North had not forgotten. Word reached Winterfell of Ned's victory, and Robb Stark raised the direwolf banner not in rebellion, but in readiness. "If they move against father," he told the lords of the North, "we will move against them." Across the map, others stirred. In the Riverlands, Tywin Lannister seethed, his daughter imprisoned, his grandson taken, and his legacy humiliated, all by a Stark with too much honor and just enough nerve. He summoned every bannerman. "If the wolf wants blood, we'll drown him in it," he said coldly. Jaime Lannister still sat in chains at Riverrun, but even he knew what was coming. "Father will burn the realm before he lets us fall," he told Catelyn Stark during another cold exchange. "You'd better hope your husband is smarter than I think." Back in King's Landing, Ned met with the small council. What was left of it? Grand Maester Pycelle still sat stiffly, giving quiet Lannister sympathies. Varys offered words laced in silk and poison. Renly Baratheon, arrogant and smiling, now dared to suggest he should be king, not his older brother Stannis. "People like me," Renly said. "They fear Stannis, that matters." "Stannis is the rightful heir," Ned said, jaw tight. "And when has rightful ever meant victor in this city?" Renly replied, leaning forward. "You killed Littlefinger. You stopped the Lannisters. Good. But now you'll have to stop me." The council dissolved in tension. War was no longer a question. It was only a matter of who would strike first. That evening, as Ned sat alone, reading Stannis's terse reply, "I come for what is mine," he knew the peace he hoped for would never last. Littlefinger was gone, but his chaos had already taken root, and now every snake in the kingdom was ready to bare its fangs. The morning skies over King's Landing were thick with fog, like the breath of ghosts. Ned Stark stood on the balcony of the Tower of the Hand, staring down at the city he now controlled, but didn't trust. Every shadow held a whisper, every smile hid a knife. The letter from Stannis had arrived 3 days ago. True to his nature, it was blunt, cold, and absolute. He accepted Ned's invitation and would sail to King's Landing with his army. Justice, "Will be done," the last line read. But justice was never simple in the capital. Renly Baratheon had vanished the night before, his guards, his banners, gone. No word. Just silence. Varys had confirmed it with a frown and a nod. "He's raising his own claim," the eunuch said. "With the Reach behind him, he could move faster than Stannis. And you, my lord, will be caught in the middle." Ned clenched his jaw. "Let them come. Stannis has the rightful claim. That's all that matters." Varys sighed like a tired teacher. "Right and wrong don't matter here. Power does, and power, Lord Stark, is about perception." Meanwhile, Cersei and her children remained imprisoned. Tommen cried often. Myrcella was silent, too young to understand the full weight of her family's fall. But Joffrey was pure rage. Even from his cell, his screams echoed through the stones. Promises of vengeance, of murder, of fire and blood. Maester Pycelle had begun warning the court. Madness runs in the blood. He is not just cruel, he is dangerous. Ned wanted to execute Joffrey, to end the threat before it could grow. But Stannis had insisted the boy be kept alive until the trial. Ned agreed, barely. It was a mistake, and he knew it. The boy had no soul, only hunger for power and hate. Out in the streets, the people were restless. The queen was locked away. The king was dead, and a Stark sat as protector of the realm. Some cheered him, others spat when his name was mentioned. The capital had no love for northerners, and they feared what would come next. In the Great Hall, preparations were underway for Stannis' arrival. The throne itself had been left empty by Ned's command. "Until the rightful king sits on it, no one will," he said. But that only made the room colder, emptier, haunted. Then the raven came. Renly crowned himself in Highgarden. The words were simple, but the meaning was sharp as a blade. The Tyrells had backed him. The Reach was his. A second king now marched on King's Landing, and Tywin Lannister had not been idle. Reports reached the city. He had rallied half. The West declared the imprisonment of his daughter an act of war and begun his march toward Harrenhal. His raven said only this: "Release my daughter, or I burn your world." Ned met with the few loyal lords he had, men like Lord Garland Velaryon, Sir Barristan Selmy, and even Davos Seaworth, who had ridden ahead of Stannis' fleet. They sat in grim silence as Ned laid out the growing map of chaos. "We have 3 kings now," Davos said, "and one lion marching east with fire on his breath." Sir Barristan shook his head. "The realm bleeds because the wolves and lions forgot the dragons. We should have seen this coming." Ned leaned over the table, the weight of it all pressing into his bones. "We must hold the capital until Stannis arrives. If Renly gets here first, we refuse him entry. If Tywin tries to break the gates, we fight. If the people riot, we hold the line." Garland looked doubtful. "And if Stannis comes, and the people hate him more than they feared Joffrey?" "Then we remind them what fear really is," Ned said, "colder than the north." Later that night, as fires flickered in the distance and rumors of riots began to spread, Ned stood with Arya on the battlements. "Is it true, father?" she asked. "Is war coming again?" He looked down at her, this fierce little girl who didn't flinch like Sansa, didn't pretend like the court. She wanted the truth. "Yes," he said quietly. "And this time, we won't be able to stop it." She looked out over the city, eyes dark and defiant. "Then we fight." Ned smiled just barely. "Aye," he said, "we fight." And as the bells of the city tolled midnight, Ned Stark knew the game had changed. Littlefinger was gone. But the storm he built was only just beginning. The storm broke not with steel, but with fire. At dawn, smoke rose from Flea Bottom. Riots had erupted overnight, shops looted, gold cloaks overwhelmed, and angry mobs blaming the northern usurper for taking their queen. Bread was scarce, and rumors spread like wildfire that Ned Stark meant to kill the king's children, that the Lannisters were marching to burn the city, that dragons had returned. Lies, mostly, but lies were louder than truth in King's Landing. Ned stood before a city slipping from his fingers. He had already doubled the city watch, posted men at every gate and locked down the Red Keep, but it wasn't enough. Rage had no doors to lock, and now, with Renly declaring himself king and Tywin Lannister marching east, the walls were closing in. By the 4th hour of morning, a raven arrived. Tywin Lannister has taken Harrenhal. No bloodshed, no siege. The gates had opened for him. The lords of the Riverlands feared his wrath more than their honor. Ned knew what that meant. In a fortnight, the Lion would be within striking distance of King's Landing, and Stannis, still days away. His fleet had encountered storms, delays, perhaps even sabotage. Varys, of course, appeared when the tension snapped. He always did, floating through corridors like a ghost of war. "My lord," he said, voice light, "the city stirs like a hornet's nest. I fear if we cannot calm the buzz, it will sting us all to death." Ned, exhausted, replied, "Let them come. I have no more patience for games." "Oh, but others do," Varys said gently. "Renly, for one. He now holds Highgarden, and with it 50,000 swords. The Reach is rich, obedient, and desperate. To avoid Lannister fire, you could strike a deal, marry your daughter to his house, give him your backing." "I will not betray Stannis," Ned snapped. "He is the true heir." Varys sighed. "Then you may preserve honor, but lose everything else." Even Ser Barristan, loyal as he was, began to show doubt. "I have served 3 kings, Lord Stark. All fell because pride blinded them to practicality. I fear you're following their path." But Ned couldn't bend. Not now. Not when he had come so far and sacrificed so much. That night, Sansa visited him in his solar. She was pale, quieter than usual. "I've been hearing things," she said, "about Renly, about Joffrey, about you." Her eyes welled with confusion and pain. Was any of it real? Was he ever going to marry me? Ned looked at her not as a lord, but as a father. "He was never going to love you, Sansa. You were a pawn to him, a prize to win and break." She didn't cry, not this time. "And what now? Will I marry some other king?" He touched her cheek gently. "No. Not unless you want to. We're not in the north, but I'll protect you like we are." Arya, meanwhile, had taken to wandering the tunnels of the Red Keep, mapping the halls, listening through walls. She heard everything. In the dungeons, she saw Cersei still pacing like a caged beast. Once she stood so close Arya could hear her muttering names. Stark, Stark, Stark. That same night, a bloody man arrived at the gates, one of Ned's scouts, barely alive. "Renly's army, 2 days away," he croaked. "He means to enter the city with or without your permission. And Tywin is already riding for the King's Road. 2 kings, 1 capital, and Ned stuck between them like meat in a lion's jaws. He ordered the gates sealed, all entrances barred. If Renly comes, he stops outside the city," he said. "He can make his case at court with Stannis present. Not before." But even he knew it was fragile. A single spark could destroy everything. The spark came quicker than expected. In the dead of night, someone freed Joffrey. It was silent, careful, clean. Gold cloaks bribed, cells unlocked. No trail. But the boy prince was gone, vanished into the city, and likely into Lannister hands. Ned's fury boiled over. "Find him," he growled. "Find the traitors who let him out. Tear the city apart if you must." But deep down, he already knew. The game had slipped out of his grasp again. Littlefinger was dead, but his legacy still slithered through the streets like a curse. And now the wolves, lions, and stags would all clash at the gate. The city would drown in blood before dawn. The bells rang at sunrise, not for mourning nor celebration, but for war. King's Landing stood on the edge of a knife, and the steel was already slipping into flesh. From the east, Renly Baratheon's army had arrived, green banners of house. Tyrell blooming like 1,000 deadly flowers just beyond the city gates. They made no attempt to hide their numbers. 50,000 men in shining armor, proud and bold, camped beneath the sunrise as if they already owned the city. From the west, word came with the wind. Tywin Lannister was days away, cutting a path. Straight through the Riverlands, burning towns that failed to kneel, sparing only those who opened their gates. His arrival would not be a siege, it would be a reckoning. And inside the city, chaos. Joffrey had vanished into the night. Rumors said he was seen near the Sept of Baelor. Others swore he had boarded a ship with gold cloaks and sailed for Casterly Rock. Ned had no proof, no trail, only the certainty that his enemies were now gathering. Still, he stood his ground. Stannis arrived at dusk, his sails black against a blood-orange sky. His army was smaller than Renly's, but disciplined, loyal, hardened, soldiers who feared him more than death. Davos came first, walking beside his lord like shadow to flame. They met in the great hall, which had never felt so heavy. Ned stood at the throne's base. Beside him, Sir Barristan. Behind him, stark men with swords drawn, and before him, the man who would be king. Stannis Baratheon's face was carved from stone, bitter, cold, and unmoved. "You've held my seat, Lord Stark," he said. "Now give it back." Ned stepped aside. "It was never mine. I've only held it to keep this city from drowning before you arrived." Stannis walked past him and stopped at the foot of the Iron Throne. He did not sit. Not yet. Then the doors flew open. Renly entered, flanked by knights in golden armor and banners trailing behind him like silk tongues. He smiled, always too wide, too polished. "Brother," Renly said, "must we do this here? In front of the wolves and spiders?" Stannis turned slowly. "You are not my brother, not any more." Renly chuckled. "Oh, come now, don't be so grim. You've always been good at brooding. Let me be the charming one." "I have the blood claim," Stannis said. "You have a crown made of flowers and whispers." "I have the people," Renly replied, calm but firm. "They love me. They don't know you, and if you try to take the throne by force, they'll side with me. You would claim a crown built on bastards and treason. I would claim peace," Renly said, eyes sharp. "The people want a king who smiles, not a tyrant who burns them for grammar mistakes." It was then that Ned stepped forward. "The realm cannot afford two kings. Not now, not with Tywin at our doorstep. If you fight, the city will fall before the Lannisters even arrive." Neither brother blinked. Ned turned to Renly. "Stand down. Let Stannis take the throne. You can have the Reach. You'll rule with wealth and peace." Renly's smile faded. "And if I don't?" Ned's voice turned to steel. "Then I'll stand with Stannis." The room fell into silence, thick as mud. Then Renly exhaled. So be it. He turned and walked away. Outside, the battle began before midnight. Renly's men tried to force the gates. Stannis's soldiers held the walls. Fire lit the sky as the streets screamed below. Gold cloaks turned on each other. Loyalists bled in the alleys. And in the middle of it all, the people ran. Nowhere to go, no one left to trust. But then came the real death blow. Tywin Lannister arrived at the city's western gate, not with a siege, but with Joffrey in his saddle, crowned in gold and flanked by 1,000 Lannister knights. The city opened its gates. Betrayal. Inside, panic broke through the walls. The Red Keep filled with clashing swords. Screams echoed down the halls. Ned Stark fought through the chaos, trying to reach his daughters. He found Arya first, bloodied, but alive, her blade red with a dozen kills. She looked like a ghost of war. "Sansa!" he shouted. "She's gone!" Arya cried. "They took her. The Lannisters, but it was too late. By dawn, the banners of the Lion flew over the Red Keep. Once more, Renly lay dead outside the gate. Stannis retreated to his ships, and Ned Stark stood at the steps of the throne, surrounded by Lannister steel. Tywin approached slowly. "You should have stayed in the north," he said. But Ned didn't kneel, didn't beg. He simply stared. "I will die with my honor." "He," said Tywin, nodded. "That can be arranged." And so the blade came once more, not from a traitor this time, but from war itself. Littlefinger was dead, but the game he started claimed its prize anyway, and the North remembered. Always.